Good morning. Welcome to Thinking is Contagious. Watching the occurrences here on Tuesday after yesterday, Monday, the ratification, certification of the Electoral College votes for Biden. Pretty much puts a fork in it, I think, for the Trump chances. Doesn't mean that I've changed my view at all about what has led us here. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. You want proof of who we're dealing with here and the situation that's faced in this country today. Look at the talk this morning between the rhinos, the Democrats, the swamp, about all of a sudden coming together for this two-tier stimulus bill, and Pelosi playing nice with McConnell, and the swamp is back to euphoria now that they've had their certification yesterday and they feel they know what's coming. The head swamp creature will be Joe Biden. The swamp can go back to business as normal. The under-the-table corruption, the self-serving, self-interest, the no accountability to the American people is back, stronger than ever. And what was the cost? The cost was the reputation of the United States of America's election system. It is going to come out, it's going to be proven that there was massive election fraud here. And it's all a part of the campaign, the 4-year civil war to eliminate the threat to the swamp, to eliminate the threat to their feeding trough that the politicians gorge on, the feeding trough of taxpayer dollars that they gorge on, and the fear that through accountability, responsibility, fiscal responsibility, they were going to be held accountable to the American people, and all of a sudden, the game was going to change. Well, they undertook a 4-year journey. And I think there's a great article in the Epoch Times, which is a conservative print paper. It's also on the internet. And they go step by step, the 4-year journey. They call it the 4-year-long war on Trump. And in that article, they start with politically motivated investigations. We're talking about, obviously, the Russia hoax, the Ukraine, those types of things, that they played such a major role as the foundation. The FBI under the Obama administration in 2016 launched a politically motivated investigation of the Trump campaign based on publicly available information. We know the investigation was initiated based on the thinnest of evidence, which were remarks made by a junior Trump campaign advisor to the Australian ambassador in London. In reality, the investigation primarily relied on the discredited Steele dossier, produced by former M16 agent Christopher Steele on behalf of the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee. I'm going to read from the Epoch Times article. It's by their staff. And that way, get a little clearer picture. Then the media, they go to step 2, which is the media. Perhaps one of the most powerful forces working against Trump was the news media. Over the past 5 years, they have relentlessly published skewed and inaccurate information about Trump. This type of reporting has created a climate of anger, hate, instability in America. It has resulted in threats made to the president's life and acts of violence against his supporters. I think it's funny. I read today an article from an Arizona newspaper, and I don't remember the name of it. It said the question was being asked, is this country finally going to get together before someone gets hurt? Is the divisiveness going to end before someone gets hurt? No, someone's already been hurt. BLM and Antifa hurt many people, killed police officers. So there has already been a lot of people hurt. So I think that's pretty phony of the Arizona paper. But let's continue with the Epoch Times. FBI under Comey and McCabe, 2 absolute lying, worthless individuals, paid and bought for paid and bought for. The FBI under Director James Comey and Deputy Director Andrew McCabe proactively worked against Trump. McCabe was directly involved in Crossfire Hurricane investigation, working with FBI agent Peter Strzok and FBI attorney Lisa Page. After Comey was fired by Trump in May 2017, McCabe actively pushed the agency to further investigate Trump. McCabe's FBI went as far as suggesting Department of Justice official Bruce Orr reach back out to Steele, despite many of the claims in his dossier have been disproved by that time, and the FBI had cut ties to him over the weakness of that dossier, the falsehood of that dossier. Then they go to the Trump-Russia showdown, and while FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation itself would not find any evidence of Trump-Russia collusion, the ongoing investigation, including selective leaks to the media, would create the public narrative that Trump had colluded with Russia to win the 2016 election. So again, it was just the public narrative to get it out into people's heads and put it in their brain for the 2020. Plant the seed that Trump and Russia were synonymous. Illegal leaks. Okay, they go throughout the past 4 years, the Trump administration has been plagued by selective leaks aimed at damaging Trump's presidency. Some of these leaks have been criminal in nature, such as the leak of the transcript of Trump's conversation with foreign leaders, a felony offense. Treasury official Natalie Edwards was found guilty of illegally leaking suspicious activity reports on financial transactions by former Trump campaign associate Paul Manafort, among others. Okay? A Treasury official, Natalie Edwards, found guilty of illegally leaking reports. Then we go to the Mueller special counsel investigation. Following the firing of FBI Director Comey, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rothstein assigned former FBI Director Robert Mueller to continue the FBI's investigation of the alleged Trump-Russia collusion. Mueller would conclude in a final report that there was no evidence of such collusion, but this only came after nearly 2-year-long investigation, giving the media and Trump's political opponents leeway to portray Trump as an illegitimate president. Again, planting the seeds for the 2020 election. Corruption from the top down aimed at Trump. No matter what the political cost, the collateral damage, none of it was too much to pay for the swamp to assure its future. The swamp doesn't give a damn about you or me or any of the taxpayers. They care about the swamp. Antifa, the permanent government. Goes down to the permanent government. And though Trump as president is the leader of the executive branch, when he came to office, he inherited a federal government staffed with hundreds of thousands of employees. It's no secret that many career officials in the U.S. government have actively sought to undermine or even openly work against Trump. Many in the government have been led by false information, published by media organizations to believe that they are doing the right thing and that by working against Trump, they are putting the interests of the country first. In fact, they have done the contrary, a disservice by blocking a rightfully elected president from executing the will of the people. Trump got so much done. Trump has been such a great president. He has delivered on all his promises. Don't underestimate Warp Speed, Operation Warp Speed, what he did with that. Saved millions of lives throughout the world. Something that no other president could have done. He made it an entrepreneurial endeavor to find vaccines. And those vaccines are being delivered. Yesterday they played tape after tape of the talking heads on CNBC, CNN, MSNBC, all those experts, scientists, the pundits, including the fraud Fauci, saying that if they were lucky, a vaccine would take 12 to 18 months. That would be like miraculous, he said. Talking head after talking head said it would take a miracle. The video of the woman who took Trump on and said, you're contradicting your experts who are saying that there's not going to be a vaccine by year end. And Trump said, I'm not contradicting. There's just been a misunderstanding. There will be. Guess what? Trump was right. Like, he's been right on almost everything. He was right. It's December, and the vaccines are on the street. It was a miracle, but it was a Trump miracle. And liberals and left and all the Trump haters. You could say whatever you want about this. You cannot change that fact. What this man has accomplished with Operation Warp Speed is historic. It is one of the greatest undertakings and occurrences in the history of man, and it belongs to Donald Trump. And you talk about the Time magazine's Person of the Year, it should be the first responders, but if it's not, it was Donald Trump. Nobel Peace Prize, Donald Trump. Not only for this, but for the Middle East, okay? The Abraham Accord. You haters out there, history cannot be, will not preclude the accomplishments of Donald Trump. And that's in the face of adversity and fighting the swamp and fighting the indoctrinated fools that believe what they're told, that Trump was the enemy. Trump was the greatest asset that this country has had in a long, long time. But let's continue. The Epoch Times then jumps into Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter has been behind the riots that have plagued American cities for much of this year. The group has hijacked the concerns people have over racism and used them to justify its advance of a radical Marxist agenda. In 2015 video, BLM co-founder Patrisse Cullors described herself and her fellow founders as trained Marxists. Just like Russia, China, Cuba, and Venezuela, trained Marxists have hijacked righteous causes to advance the communist agenda. Many of those who lived through the Cultural Revolution in China in the 1960s have commented that the riots in the United States over the summer, which included the toppling of historical statues, were eerily similar. Then, of course, we go to Antifa. Antifa, dressed in full black gear, including armor, helmets, and masks, and trained in agitation and basic combat. Antifa extremists have been involved in numerous acts of violence during Donald Trump's presidency. In many cases, these acts of violence, which include the use of weapons, rocks, Molotov cocktails, were directed at law enforcement and government property. But Antifa members have also directly targeted unarmed common citizens for simply supporting Trump. That's why I laugh when that Arizona article says, was this going to end before someone gets hurt? Guess what? Conservatives are someone. Guess what? People that don't agree with your views are someone. Okay? Republicans, conservatives, religious people, we're someone. Okay? But Antifa members have also directed targeted. We saw this happen twice in Washington, where those who had gathered to support Trump were later attacked when alone in the city at night. Antifa's use of a military-style force to intimidate and physically attack citizens for their political benefits creates a powerful climate of fear and stands against the most basic American values. Then we go to foreign interference. It would be accurate to say that Trump is Communist China's biggest adversary. Absolutely. And Joe Biden is a business partner. Let's understand that. China's biggest adversary, Donald Trump. China's business partner, Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, James Biden, Jill Biden, the Biden family, business partners of China. The president broke a decades-long U.S. policy toward China that was based on the belief that through engagement and economic development, the People's Republic would evolve from a totalitarian regime toward a more democratic country. In reality, this strategy of appeasement merely resulted in trillions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of U.S. jobs going to China. Biden, Obama sent them there. Through their global view, America's becoming a service economy, manufacturing jobs, oh no, that cannot happen. They will not come back to the United States. We're not, wage-wise, we're not set up. Manufacturing-wise, we're not set up. We are a service economy, and the manufacturing is done cheaper overseas. That was Obama, Biden, period. And now, when they laughed at Trump for saying he was going to bring manufacturing back, guess what? It's back. And guess who's trying to take advantage and piggyback and saying they're going to build off of that? Biden. He is clueless. He has been clueless. For 47 years, he's been on the wrong side of almost every single argument. Almost every single situation. He's been on the wrong side. He is inept. And he is being driven by the left. Instead of becoming more democratic, the Chinese regime used this wealth to advance its dictatorship, creating the most technologically advanced tyranny the world has ever witnessed. The Communist Chinese Party has consistently worked against Trump during his presidency, both publicly and behind the scenes. Beijing has used its domestic and overseas propaganda channels, often by relying on the United States' own media, to vilify Trump, going as far as to suggest that the outbreak of the virus in Wuhan was because of American military. We then jump into the impeachment. This was a disgraceful exhibition, and Pelosi, Schiff, Schumer, Nadler, scumbags. The House of Representatives on December 18, 2019 impeached Trump along partisan lines. Though the Senate would later dismiss the charge, it left a mark on his presidency and dragged the country through months of public attack in the media. Again, aimed at the 2020 election. Aimed at the 2020 election. At the center of the impeachment was a phone call Trump made on July 25th to the Ukrainian President Zelensky, during which Trump expressed his hope that the allegations of potential corruption involving former VP Joe Biden will be investigated. Given even the publicly available information at the time, there were legitimate concerns that the American political influence and taxpayers' funds were being misused in Ukraine. And at the time, it was publicly known that Biden's son, Hunter, had received tens of thousands of dollars a month from a Ukrainian energy plant giant, while then Vice President Biden, in his own words, had pressured the Ukrainian president to fire a prosecutor as a prerequisite for receiving $1 billion in foreign aid. That same prosecutor had been investigating the Ukrainian energy company Burisma, where Hunter Biden worked. And so what it boiled down to was Joe Biden, as vice president, flexing his muscle to get a prosecutor off the case that would have involved his son, and then his brother, and him. Okay? The China virus. Trump's opponents have accused the president of mishandling the Chinese Communist Party's virus, the Hong Kong flu. Of the virus commonly referred to as the novel coronavirus by acting too late is what the claim has been, that he acted too late, Trump. This, however, is contrary to the events of early 2020. The Trump administration on February 2nd, 2020 banned all foreign travel from China. Joe Biden, de Blasio, Pelosi, clueless Cuomo, all said that he was a xenophobe and that was unnecessary. And Feinstein in California, Pelosi in California, Cuomo in New York, and de Blasio all encouraged people to attend the Chinese New Year festivals, to go out, to live their lives. Fauci in February came on TV and said it was not going to affect us. The flu was not going to affect. It was not going to be of consequence in the United States. All that's documented, okay? The Trump administration, like I said, banned all travel from China. This decision was made by the president against the advice of some of his top advisors and exceeded actions taken by most other nations at the time. Meanwhile, his opponents in politics and media described it as a xenophobic overreaction. In hindsight, the decision proved immensely valuable in helping to slow the spread of the virus. As the virus spread in the United States, the Trump administration increased testing capacity, coordinated with state government to provide them with the use and used the Defense Production Act to compel companies to produce critical health equipment such as ventilators, and provided billions in federal funding and eased federal regulations for major drug companies to push for the development of a vaccine. We said that. Operation Warp Speed, no other president would have done that. None. They didn't have the gonads to do it. They didn't want to take the chance to do it. They wouldn't have pressured the private sector to do it. And more importantly, he threw money at the problem and got it resolved. Manufactured narratives is the next category that the Epoch Times talks about. The use of manufactured narratives to attack Trump have been pervasive since he assumed the presidency. Perhaps the most notable is the claim that he decided neo-Nazis in Charlottesville, defended neo-Nazis in Charlottesville, Virginia, when in fact he said that there were very fine people on both sides, referring to people who were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. Trump specifically added, I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists because they should be condemned totally. Understand that? That part was carved out. That part was not part of the selective reporting. That part was not what you were told, okay? Because the agenda, the narrative was destroy Trump, bring down Trump, save the swamp, save the swamp. If that takes steal the election, steal the election. If that takes make the United States into Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, if that's what it takes to rig an election, that's what it takes. But we must save the swamp. We must protect the feeding trough. That was the mandate. Nazis, yet despite that being on public record, the fact that he said that you had many people in that group other than the neo-Nazis and white nationalists who deserve to be condemned. Okay? But what you heard, like I said, was none of that. Finally, 2020 election fraud is where it ends. Was the final straw that breaks the camel's back, was the goal, was the objective of the 4+ years. Make sure that when election time comes, there's enough negativity, there's enough hatred, there's enough dissension, there's enough divisiveness, there's enough tension in this country to make sure that no matter what we put up, the Democrats, we being the Democrats, no matter what they put up, they had a fighting chance. But this time, to be sure, they also had dominion. They had the machines, they had the software, and they had the plan in place to make the United States a banana republic. In the eyes of the world, to say, have all the American elections been the same? And then they try to blame Trump. What happens is, what the socialists, what the Marxists do is, what they are trying to do, they transpose that, they interject that into the enemy to try to deflect. This was their objective. Following the November 3rd elections, dozens of credible allegations of voter fraud or other illegal acts connected to the counting of ballots have emerged. Dozens of poll workers across multiple states have given testimony to sworn statements under penalty of perjury, detailing irregularities in how ballots were counted, as well as how the workers were instructed to make otherwise illegal changes to ballots, how they were unable to properly observe ballot counting, and how they witnessed new ballots mysteriously appear out of nowhere. The Trump campaign and the Republican National Committee launched a number of lawsuits to challenge the process. They've argued that in Pennsylvania alone, 600,000 ballots should be invalidated, as Republican election observers weren't allowed to witness the ballot process, which is all, by the way, guaranteed under their Constitution. People, I have been open and fair on this, and I can tell you that this was fraud. I can tell you that this was an attempt to defeat Donald Trump. And if you don't see the actions this week of the coming together of the Democrats and the Republicans as proof that the odd man out, the person that both sides wanted out, was Donald Trump. And you know who loses? The American people. Because that was the only person that had the American public, the American people, as a priority. And I've always said this, so it's not a contradiction. The priority was not direct. The priority was his hell-bent desire to be considered the greatest president in the history of America. A rising tide lifts all boats. So do I say that Trump, every decision he made, said what's best for the American people? No. I think what Trump said, every decision he made, is what's going to make me the greatest president of all times, and that transposed to helping the American people. You cannot argue, and if you do, you're blind, or you're lying, or you're ignorant. Under Trump, the economy for minorities, black, Hispanic, Asian, was the best it's ever been. Ever. Way better than Obama, way better than Bush, way better than Clinton, way better than anyone. The greatest economy for minorities ever. Period. The greatest wage increases, the greatest net worth increases, the greatest attack and a decrease in inequality of wages based on the factors of race, religion, gender, whatever. This is a man who, through his hell-bent desire to be great, lifted this country. And what you're going to see now for the next year or 2 years until Kamala, the praying mantis, takes him out. Well, the left will take him out, but she will be the president. What you're going to see is a feckless, weak, ineffective, lying, self-serving, do-nothing, unaccomplished, unimpressive person, political figure, who is the business partner of the Chinese Communist Party. Period. Okay, hope you enjoyed it. Hope you share it. And it's long, but I think it's worth listening to. And again, Epoch Times, look it up. Great publication, great journalist, do a great job. EPOCH, Epoch Times. Thank you.